Okay, so for now, we'll be having a review on HTML and CSS. So we can just open, again, let's just open the folder that we downloaded through the drive as sent by Ricky in the email. And then for now, what we have here is a review folder, which we just made, and then a review.html, which we just made inside the review folder. So again, just to start again, what we want to do is first do an exclamation point just to have the boilerplate ready for HTML. So let's just have that. So here we have all the stuff that we get out of the box. So for the content of the website, we place it here in the body. Then for example, we want to imagine that we want to make two articles. One article having a header, a paragraph, an image, and a link. So for that, what we want to do is to make a header, we can use H1 to H6, H1 being the biggest. For example, we want to have the biggest, and we want to put the title of our article. For example, article title. And then for paragraph, we want to use a p tag. A p tag is for paragraph. So we can put our paragraph here. So for example, we want to have like a paragraph stating this is a paragraph, blah, blah. Then to make an image, we use the img tag. So on top of the h1, for example, we want to have an image on top of it. And then we can use our images here. Let's say we want to use, for example, what do we want to use? Let's use, where is it? Desktop. It's missing. Oh, here, we want to use this image dash intro dot dash desktop dot jpg. Now, since it's in a folder outside, what we want to do is to do dot dot slash, then images, then image intro desktop dot jpg. And that, we're basically linking the image to this image tag so that it will pop out. And then to make a link, for example, you want to press a link and then it will lead to another file or another website. We use the A tag. The A tag naman is inside the href. We'll be putting the website where we want to go to. So for example, here we want to put http colon dash dash www.google.com. And then inside the A tag, we want to put the text that we want to show when the user clicks on that link. So for example, you want to go to Google or something. So here, just to reiterate, we have an image, an H1, a paragraph, and a link. So to see this website, what we want to do is to right click or command click for Mac. Then we want to open with live server. You'll see open with live server option here. And then when we see the live server, we'll be able to see it. There you go. So here we have an image, a header, a paragraph, and a link. So if we click on the link, for example, it will lead us to Google. See, it works. Now, what if we want to have another article of the same thing? So for example, we want to copy paste this. Copy paste. And then maybe we want to use this one, icon affordable prices.png. So we can change the image to like icon affordable prices.png. So there, the image, this is a different article naman. But as you can see here, they're kind of like squished up to each other. So for HTML, for us to divide different parts of our HTML, we use something called a div. So you put a div and then we put it inside here. So this allows us to divide several elements in our HTML. So this gets really useful when you start to style your HTML. So div allows us basically to divide our document into separate parts. So there you go. Now, if you see, there, it's more separated na siya. Now, what makes divs useful is the ability to style them and to style multiple elements at once. So for example, if you have a parent div here, what you can do is put styling to this div so that all these elements get styled all at once. So what that means is, for example, what I'll do here is I'll put a style tag. And then in this div, for example, I want to put a class of article. Now, this class.article is for us to get that element and then start to style it. So for example, in this div class equals article, we want to do dot article. So for this, the syntax to get a class is to use a dot and then article. And then we want to style it. For example, we want to have a background for that article. So for example, a background of, I don't know, blue. And as you can see, the entire article gets styled into blue. So what if I also want to style this one? Maybe let's put a class of article 2. Then we just do dot article dash 2 and then set a background. That for example, we want to use blue violet. And there you go. So classes are a way for us to style elements, and at the same time, it allows us to style the entire thing. We don't have to style each one. The image, we have to style it. Header one, we have to style it. What we can do instead is style this entire div, which we just set up with add a class to it. Then with the CSS, we can start to style it as a whole rather than in separate parts. So for example, we want to also put a color of white, and a color of white here also. See, all the text turns white. We don't have to style header one is white, paragraph is white, and then the link is white. So we don't have to do that. We can just set a div here and then style everything at once. Now, next up, I want to discuss more on the box model. So for example, let's see our PowerPoint from last time. So here, this is the box model. So there's basically four parts to it. First is the width and height. How big, how tall, and how wide do you want the element to be? So for example, in here, we want it to be 300 pixels wide. So what happened here is this text from left to right is 300 pixels. Now border is what is surrounding it, the outline. So for example, here he said, I want 15 pixels solid green. So this green border here is 15 pixels wide, and it's solid in color, and it's colored green. That's why you see it over there. So we discussed width and height and border. Now we're going to discuss padding. So padding naman is more on how wide do you want the content, the 300 pixels width here. How wide do you want it to be from the border? What do you mean? So like for example here, the text is here, right? You see it here. How wide do you want this to be from the border to the text? So this is around 50 pixels. This is around 50. This is around 50, and this is around 50. Now margin naman is more of from your current element, how much spacing do you want versus its neighboring element? So for example, you have another div beside it. How spacious do you want it to be? Do you want it 20 pixels? Do you want it 50 pixels? And that kind of determines how far each element or neighboring elements are from each other. So let me show you an example. So right here, diba, you have an article here, and then another article here that's colored purple. Now, what if you want a border? Because it looks so plain na parang there's not much going around in the edges. So what we can do is for article one, for example, we want to add a border, and then we want to say we want it to be 3 pixels wide, we want it to be solid, and we want it to be color green. And there you go. You can start to see the border there. Now you might say, now okay, this is it's color green, it's working, but I want it to be a bit farther from the image. Because look at this, sobrang nakadikit na siya. Like the header, the paragraph, it's too near the border. I want to have a bit of space there. What we can do is add a padding of, let's say, 100 pixels. And there you go. See, there's more space between the border and the actual content. And now, what we can also do is, for example, if you want to have, let's comment this out. To comment, you use Control/. If you want to like only have padding or border in one side, for example, I only want to have padding in the left side, what we can do is use padding left, 100 pixels. And it will do the same thing. It will add it to the left. You can also do padding right, padding top, padding bottom. There's also a shorthand of padding where the first digit is padding from top to bottom, top and bottom, and then the second digit is left and right. So for example, I want 100 pixels in the top and bottom, and I want 300 pixels in the left and right. There you go. So 300 pixels left and right, 100 pixels top and bottom. So that's basically how padding works, and border and so on and so forth. Now, going on to margin, what if I realize that, okay, I have my padding set, I have my border set, but why is it so near the second article? I wanted to have a bit of space in the bottom. So what we can do is to add margin. Margin, let's say we want to have a margin of 100 pixels, and it will push it down. The reason why it's going 100 pixels in all sides is because we specified margin. We didn't say margin bottom, margin left, or something. We said all sides have to be 100 pixels. So what if we only wanted to be at the bottom? As mentioned earlier, we can use margin bottom, 100 pixels. And with that, we'll just push it down. Now you realize that, okay, I want all my styles of this article to be the same as here. So how will I do that? Well, as you can see, we set a different class name to this. So what we can do is instead, in this class here, let's add the article class. And what this will do is it will combine the article and the article 2 styles. So as you can see, both of them are styled the same way now. Now, you might ask, like, oh, there's two classes here, article and article 2. How will I know which one will be styled? As mentioned earlier, both will be styled. But what if they have the same properties? What's going to happen is the latter class will overwrite the first one, the article. So, for example, all these styles will be applied, but since they both have background blue and another background property here, what this will do is the blue violet will overwrite the background blue. So that's why all styles still apply, but instead the background is now different. So that's it for the box model. Now the most important part to make sure that we get to build the website later is to use something called Flexbox. Flexbox is super important. Um, so what I want to show you guys now is to have our elements reposition themselves based on how we want them to be. We want them to be responsive and flexible. So we don't want them to just be sticking out there like very long and like static and like very stiff. We want to organize our articles in a way that will look nice. So for that, as you can see, we have article here and another article here. What we can do is add another div to encompass all these articles. And as you can see, and I save it and reformat everything. Let me just put some spacing so it's neat. Now, as you can see, we now have a parent div encompassing all these articles. So what we can do is we can put here class equals article dash list. And we're just saying that, okay, we're going to make a list of articles here. Now, to make this more, let's say, nicer, I guess, is to go to article, go to your style, and then do dot article dash list. And maybe put a background of like, I don't know, um, let's say we wanted to just be color like the hashtag 33333. Oh yeah, in HTML you can also use hexadecimal, so you can search up online on what that is. What basically we use digits to like refer to code. I mean refer to colors basically. So this hashtag 33333 just means that we kind of want it to be in a dark color, of like maybe a bit lighter than black, basically. And as you can see, the black part is encompassing all the entire article list. But the thing is, the child elements, the article is overlapping on top of the black. But the entire black background is in the entire thing, the entire article list. So it's just behind it. So you'll see it later on. So what you want to do is maybe for the articles you want to set maybe a width because maybe they're kind of too big. You want it to be a bit smaller. So maybe you want to set a width of like 300 pixels and maybe a height of 600 pixels. Maybe that's a bit too small. Maybe that's a bit too small. Maybe we want it to be around 500 pixels. There you go. And maybe around, let's say, 500 pixels also in height. Now, as you can see, the image is too big. We want to adjust the image size. So for that, we can add a class to this image. class equals article dash image.
Renzo, nakamute ka.
Renzo, Renzo, you're muted. Renzo,
Hello.
we can hear you now.
Was when did I stop?
When you're resizing the image,
Okay. So basically, for that dot article dot image, you want to set the width to 200 pixels. So for that image to be a bit smaller. So there you go. It's small now. Now we can just resize our article again since now we I feel like it's too big. Let's set it to 300 pixels in width. Let's see. Okay, that's a bit smaller. Maybe 200 pixels. There you go. And maybe around 400, 300 pixels in height. There you go. Um, Now, what we want to do is to be able to arrange these articles. So now that we have this entire container that's encompassing all our articles, the article list, remember we made a div and made the background kind of black. So what we can do there now is in the article list, the parent element, so oh it's already here, the article list, we want to set it to display flex. And what display flex will do is put the articles beside each other and then have the ability to reposition them wherever in the container. So for this, we have two properties. One is called justify content. And justify content, what it allows you to do is to reposition these articles from left to right or right to left. So I'll show you some properties. So flex start, let's say flex end muna, flex end, it will put them at the very right. What if we want center? We want them to be centered. It will put them at the center. There you go. Now we want it to be flex start. If you want it to be flex start, it's going to go back to the start from where it came from. There's also something called space around. Space around allows us to have some spacing in between. Also, there's also space between that will split them up to the very edge. Now, as you can see, they're too high up. You want them to be a bit down to the center. So there's another property called align items. Align items allows us to reposition these, let's say, article cards from top to bottom. So, for example, uh, for justify content, we want them to be spaced around so that there's some spacing at the sides, and then we want them to be centered up from top to bottom. So, align items center. Hello, why is it not working? Just space around align item center. Let me just inspect this. Like 20 by 1080. Let's see what's wrong with this. Oh, the reason why it's not going down is because we had set margins at the article. That's why it's kind of pushing to the top. Like it's pushing here at the bottom to make it go top. So we want to remove the margins. So we in the article we remove margin bottom 100 pixels. And then for the article list, we want to add more height to it. So let's say for the article list, we want to set a height of 800 pixels. And there you go. Naka-center na siya. So it's very important that you have your, let's say your parent element has enough space so that the child elements get to move around up and down. Because if there's no space, like it's so tight, how will it move up and down? That's gonna kind of restrict it. So we want to add more height para the child elements get to reposition themselves up and down. Yeah, so that's basically a review. Do you guys have any more questions on how Flexbox works? If you don't have any more questions, just type no questions in the chat. Just enter that chat. Or if you have any questions, just feel free to message in the chat also. So I'm assuming no questions. Guys, wake up. Hello, am I still heard?
Loud and clear.
Sige, sige. No questions naman. But if everything here doesn't sound clear, don't worry. It will all start to make sense when we start to build the website. So, are you guys ready with starting to build the website? Are you guys in the file now of the file that you downloaded? Just press yes in the chat if you are. Yes. Yes. How about the others? Are you guys good to go? Okay. So now that you have the index.html file here, what we want to do is to first comment out all of this because these are just basically the text that we're going to be using for the HTML file. So let's just comment that out. Now, um, let's look at the Figma of the site. So here we can see that we're dividing it into separate sections. So for example, here we have a nav component. We also have a header component. Then we also have like let's say I guess we can call it an about section, and then a find out more section, and then a footer section over here. Oops, over here. So what our plan here is, what we're gonna do is we're gonna separate them into separate divs. So for example, we have a nav div, we have a header div, we have an about div, so on and so forth. So we're first gonna start out with the nav div, this one. So what we can do is we can go to our site, and then in here we're just gonna make a file called styles.css. So this is where we're gonna start placing our styles, basically inside the website. So to link the index.html to the styles.css, what we can do is from here we can type link. There you go. Then type styles.css. There you go. Now our HTML is styled with our it's basically linked to our styles.css. Now let's make the nav component. So for here, what we want to do is to type. We can use a div for the nav, but for better convention, what we can use is called semantic HTML. Semantic HTML is basically using divs, but in a way that we can label them to make sure that any other coder, whoever is using our file, whoever is coding with us, will understand. Okay, this div means it's a nav. So what we can do instead is use nav. It's a built-in semantic tag in HTML to refer to navigation bars. So we can use that instead of a div, just for better convention. So here, I'll just show you what I'm doing. We're gonna say that this entire thing, let's just color it black. Remove that and put a stroke of black there. And then let's make it a bit thicker. Then in here, what we can do is, for example, this entire box over here, we're referring to the nav, we're referring to the nav div. Then inside the nav div, what we can do is have this let's say nav content div, like this entire thing. That we can put a div inside the nav div. So this will encompass our content in the nav div. So this is called nav content. Then inside the nav content, what we can do is have an image over here. This is an image. Then we can also have the links to our nav over here. So in summary, we have a nav div over here, this outer box. Then inside we have a nav content. Then inside the nav content, we have a nav image here and the nav links. So let's start with that. So in here, we have nav, and then let's have a class here of nav bar. Then we're gonna have a div of nav bar content. So that's the content I mentioned earlier. Now we also want to have inside this nav content we want to have the image as shown earlier. Image. And then what we're gonna have there is called logo.png. So let's just put images dash logo.png. Then inside, what we're also gonna put is the nav links. So we can create another div here called class equals nav bar links. And let's just open the live server so I can show you what we've been doing so far. So far, we only have the logo shown because we haven't written text yet for the nav links. So for the nav links, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the A tags. So that means we're gonna make them links. So A, and then let's check the Figma. We have how we work, blog, account, and view plan. So how we work, then blog, then account, and view plans. There you go. There, now you can see it in our browser. So how we work, blog, account, and view plans. So how do we style this? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you the general styles we're gonna use for our website. So for the body, oh yeah, before that, we want to be able to import our font families, our styles. So there's basically fonts we can use in the internet and insert them in our HTML. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the internet, we're gonna search Google Fonts, and then go to Google Fonts. I'm gonna show you guys how to insert fonts for your HTML. And then we're just gonna search here, Carla. Carla. And click on that. And then we're just gonna pick, let's see what I picked here. We're gonna pick font 400. So select the style at 400. And then we're also gonna select 700. So the bold. So once you selected that, what we want to do is get this link over here and insert it in index.html below the styles.css. There you go. Let's just fix the formatting. Next, what we also want to do is to get a font called DM Serif. So let's go to DM Serif. It's called DM Serif Display. So DM Serif Display, what we want to get is basically um, the regular font. So select the style at regular 400. And then we're just going to copy again this link over here. Let's just copy the second one because in the first link, we already copied it earlier. So the second link, there you go. So now we have our font installed in our website basically. Now what we want to do is for our entire body, we're saying the entire HTML file, we want the font family to be Carla because we want all our text to be Carla font. We don't want it to be the stock HTML font. And then we're gonna say we want to have a backup font of sans serif. So the sans serif is like the backup if ever it can't detect it. Then we're gonna have a letter spacing of 0.025 rem. This basically means that if you have words, they're more spaced out the letters. Then a line height of 1.5. That's basically like the spacing. So line spacing. So 1.5. Then for H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6, we want to have a font family of DM, serif, oops, my bad. Why is this happening? My typing. Serif, display, and a backup of serif. Then we want the font weight to be 400. The one we got earlier from the Google fonts. We want it to be 400 weight, meaning we want it to be a bit bold. And then a line height of 1, because we don't want it to be too spaced out, the line height. Now for each one, we want it to be a font size of 60 pixels because we want it to be very big. And then for H2, we want a font size of 45 pixels, maybe a bit smaller from the H1. And then on H3, we want the size to be 23 pixels. And there we have our font set up. Now, if you can see, let's just open our file from earlier. No, not that one. This one. As you can see, look at your links now. They already have a font of Carla because we set everything to Carla. So now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the nav. So let's just remove this. For the nav bar class, the pinaka heading, the pinaka parent, we're gonna say dot nav bar. Then we're gonna set the height of the nav bar to around 60 pixels. Let's see, 60 pixels. And maybe put a background muna of, let's say gray, just to see how it looks like. And as you can see, there's some margins at the left and right and top. And because what happens there is because in their browsers, they kind of set like preset margins into your file. We kind of don't want that. So what we can do is we can just do an asterisk, meaning all the elements, we want to have no margins and no padding. Just to get everything to reset to 0, para we can just set it ourselves later on. And there you go. Now, as you can see, the content, it's too much to the left. We want it to be to have a bit more margins on the left and right para it looks neater. So what we can do is in the dot navbar content, we can set the width to 80%. And as you can see, nothing happens because as you can see, if we inspect the element and we kind of zoom in, navbar, as you can see here, if you can see properly, it's 80%, but it's not centered. So in order to center and to have equal margins in the left and right, what we do is set it to margin auto. And there you go. As you can see, there's a bit of margin size. The width of the content is now 80%. So if you look at the Figma of what we just did, we have the entire nav here set to 60 pixels. Then we have the content, which is only set to 80% of the nav parent. And then we put margin auto so it gets centered. So that's what we did so far. Now we have to fix the logo, which is already kind of fixed. And then we also have to fix the links. Now, if we go to our styles here, as you can see the links, what happened there is they're not, let's say, it's not beside the insure. It's kind of like at the bottom. We want it to be beside. So as mentioned earlier, what we can do there is to use display flex so that they go beside each other and then be able to like flexibly move the two of these elements basically. So for example, in let's say the nav bar content, we can do display flex. So the child elements get repositioned beside each other. Now, as mentioned earlier, we have a property called justify content. What justify content will do is be able to reposition them from left to right any way you want. So we can do justify content and do something called space between. So now they have more space between each other. Now there's something wrong. Why is it that it's kind of too much in the top? It's because we didn't set up a property called align item center, right? Earlier, we were able to tweak it so that we can be able to adjust the proper child elements top and bottom. So we can just do align item center. And as you can see, nothing happens. Why? Let's check. If you can inspect element, the navbar content, as mentioned earlier, there's no height. There's not enough height for the elements to go move down. So what we want is to have this, we to have this navbar content to have the same height as the navbar because it's kind of like too short. So what we can do is in the navbar content, we set a height of 100%. 100% means we want it to be the same height as the parent element, which is the navbar, which is 60 pixels, diba? And there you go. It's looking better. Now, in here, you can see that the links are too spaced, they're too tight from each other. What we can do is to set a class for each and put a margin left so that they get pushed out. Remember, we used margins earlier to push down neighboring elements. So what we can do is to put a class of navbar link to each one. Navbar link, navbar link, navbar link, and navbar link. Then for every navbar link, we want to have a margin left because we want to push it a bit left so that there will be a bit more space there. Margin left. Let's say we want it to be around 40 pixels. There, looks better. Now there's one last thing to fix. We don't want these links to be colored. They're color purple. We don't want them to have that, and they also have underline. So what we can do for every link we make, we want the text decoration to be none, meaning we don't want any underlines there, and then we want the color to be black. Let's just double check, and there you go. Now for now, we don't want the color to be black because we don't want all our links to be black. So we'll just set them. We'll set the color in the navbar link here instead of all the A tags. We just want to set it to the navbar link specifically. So the color here is gonna be 817B85. That's a color grayish color. And then for all our links, we want them to be a font weight of 700. Now we can't see it because it's colored gray. Let's just remove the gray. That was just for example. Navbar background gray. Let's remove that. And there you go. We have a navbar. Now the problem there now is because in our Figma, if you can see closely, the view plans is a button. We wanted to make it look like a button. So to do that, we want to set a button property here in our CSS. And then we want to say um, we want the button to have uppercase letters in it. So text transform uppercase. And then we want the padding to be 5 pixels and 23 pixels because we don't want the border to be too close in the text of the button. We want to have a bit of space in it. And then we want to say that we want to have a border of a border of 2 pixels solid. Let's say we want it to be black. And then a color of black. Now you can see there, oh, this is the wrong file. You can see nothing styled yet. The reason why is because we don't have the button property in our A tag. So let's just put a button here. Then put an A tag inside. Let's check. And that doesn't look nice. Let's just inspect element. Why you do this to me? Why is it like this? And the reason why is because we put the button outside. We have to put it inside View plans pala, my bad. So we have to keep the A tag outside, then put the button inside. There you go. There you go. Now it looks weird because the font is not the same as ours and there's a background. So we want to remove that. So to remove that, what we can do is in the bottom we can say is font family is Carla again, do the same thing, or you can do font inherit, it's up to you. Then what we can do is say background is none. And there you go. Now it looks kind of off because the color of the button is not supposed to be black. It's supposed to be mm, hashtag 2B, 2A, 2F. And if you're wondering how I'm getting these hexadecimals, it came with the file itself. I was just able to copy it before sending it to you guys. And the color is hashtag 2B, 2A, 2F. And there you go. It looks better. Now that we have that, oops, we also forgot to put a font weight of 700 here also. Font weight of 700. It looks too thin. There, it looks better. Now that we have that, what we want to code now is the header. This header over here. Oh yeah, by the way, do you guys have any questions on the nav bar before we start to move on? If you don't have any questions, just type ready in the chat. If you have a question, just type it in the chat. No questions? Ready, ready. Okay, just to give you a summary of the nav bar, what we did was basically we created the nav here with a height of 60 pixels. And then we have a nav bar content encompassing all the content of our nav bar. And then we placed an image here and then a div of links. So inside the div, we have a tags, how we work, blog, account, and view plans. Then we set a height to the nav bar, and then in the content, what we did was use display flex so that we can position the image and the links beside space between and then align them center. Then put some margins in the links basically. So that's basically how the nav bar works. Now let's proceed to the header. Now let's use these lines again. So for here, we have an entire header tag. Let's see, this is one entire div. Then same thing as earlier, we have content, the content of the nav bar, which is around here. So the content has the another div here. Let's just move this. Another div here. That is the text. So basically the underline, the header, the paragraph, the button. Then we also have an image over here. This one. So it's just starting to get tricky now. So again, we're gonna make a header here, the entire outer box. Then we're gonna have a header content, same as the navbar earlier, a header content. Then inside the header content, we're gonna have a header text, basically the text of our header, and the header image over here. So let's start with that. So I want you guys to go to your index.html. Then we're gonna use a div, or instead of a div, what we can use is something called header. Again, it's the same thing as a div, except it has a label to it now. So, to make the header, what we can do is put a class of header here. Class of header. Then inside we have a div with a class of header content. Then, again, as mentioned earlier, we're going to have a div of header text. And then we're going to have the image. So basically, we're going to have the image. Then inside the image, we're going to use images dash image intro desktop.jpg. Now that we have that, as you can see, nothing's happening yet. So we're gonna add the text. So as you can see in the text here, humanizing your insurance, get your life, blah blah blah. The thing we commented out here earlier, you can actually just copy paste these. So in here, we can just put inside the text, we're gonna put H1, humanizing your insurance. So let's copy that. Then we're gonna have a paragraph. Actually, let's put a class in the heading one. So class equals heading header. I mean header heading, my bad. Header heading. Then for the paragraph, we're gonna have a class of header paragraph. Then we're just gonna copy paste this get your life insurance thingy thingy. Then format it. Then, as you can see, we also have a button here, a view plans button. So we're gonna add a button. And let's say we have view plans. And then we're gonna add a class of header button. So we have our HTML all set up. There you go. So as you can see, the reason why we place H1, H2, H3, H4 to have a font family of DM serif and so on and so forth, and a button to have this, is because we want all of them to have the same styling. Now we don't want to style each separate element to say, okay, this element's font family is DM serif, this font family is so on and so forth. So that's why we did that earlier, just to let you guys know. Now, for the entire header, we want to have this color, the purple color. So, as you can see, we named it header. So for our styles of CSS, let's put dot header. And then we're going to put a background of, I'll just type it for you guys. The background is hashtag 2C2640. And as you can see, nothing. Oh wait, it appears there already. Now, we forgot to put a height in our header because right now, it's just taking the height depending on the size of our content. It's height auto pack. So we want to set the height of the header to, let's say, 660 pixels. And there you go. Now, the only problem now is the text and the images are below each other. So we tackled this again earlier. What we want to do there is to use something called display flex so that they go beside each other. So always use display flex if ever you want two things to go beside each other, then be able to move them around. So for this, we want to use the dot navbar content. Then display flex. The reason why we're using dot navbar content instead of the dot header content, sorry. The reason why we're using dot header content instead of the header for display flex is because when you're using display flex, it has to be the direct child. You should be able to position the direct children of the parent element you're putting display flex in. So for example, in here, the dot header content, we want to be able to move the header text and the image. That's why we're using dot header content. If we use header for display flex, what we're essentially moving now is the dot header content. And we don't want that. We want to be able to move the image and the text, not the entire header content. I hope that makes sense. It's medyo malabo, but I hope you guys get it. But if you guys have any more questions, just feel free to chat. So we're gonna set this to display flex. And then what we're gonna use is something called justify content space between again. There. They go between each other na. Now as you can see, the same problem as the nav. The text and the images are too much in the edges. We want to add a margin, a width of 80% and margin auto again. So let's do the same thing. So let's just do a width of 80% and a margin of auto. There you go. Now we have 80% width and even spacing in the margins. So now what we want to do is to align it center. The text is too much high up. So all we can do is align item center. And there you go. See, it looks way better. Now there's a problem here. As you can see, the text is color black. So what we want to do is to set it to color white. So in our header, we want everything to be color white. And there you go. Now, let's check. I'm just gonna double check my code. Font weight is 60 pixels. H2. So yeah, give me a bit. I'm just gonna double check my code just in case I'm on the right track. If not, header one is 60 pixels. Header one is six. Oh, that's why it's small. 60 pixels. There you go. There, now it looks big. So now what we want to do is to have, and as you can see, the button is not seen. So we want to overwrite the properties of the button. So here we set the button as header button. So what we can do is dot header button. We set the color to white and the border into 2 pixels solid white. So we're basically about all the buttons here are like color black here. Color black and border is black. But here, we're overwriting it with the header button class. So color is white and border is 2 pixels solid white. And there you go. Now, let me just double check. Why is it so thin? Let me just add a bit of padding to the top. So let's go to the button, add some padding to the top. Let's say around 9 pixels. There, that looks way better. Then, in here, we want to add some margin on the top of the paragraph and then on the top of the button. So to do that, let's go to dot header paragraph and put a margin top of, let's say, maybe around 20 pixels. There you go. It looks way better. Then for the button also, we want to also have a margin top of 20 pixels. And there we go. Now, if you can see here, we also have a line over there. So how do we add that? So what we can do is make use of a div. So what we can do is put here div and then put a class of line. Then put nothing in it. Don't put any content in it. Then what we're gonna do here is kind of a tricky thing. Header line. And then in header line, dot header line, what we're gonna do is put a margin. Let me just check here. We're gonna put a width of 200 pixels and a height of 2 pixels and put a color, a background of white. So it's like we're doing something tricky here. We're gonna get a div, put a width and a height, then set the background to white. So it's gonna look like a line. So if you can see here, there, you can see the line. Now what we're gonna do there is to add a margin top of this header so that it gets pushed up a bit. So in dot header dot heading, we're gonna do a margin top of 20 pixels also. Let's do little, let's say around 70, 80. I think that looks fine. Let's double check. Yeah, I think that looks nice. So what we're gonna do now is we want this image to be a bit bottom. Kasi in our Figma, it's overlapping through the header. So this is the tricky part. What we can do instead is the .nav content, this one, we're gonna make it, instead of center, align item center, we're gonna make it align items flex start. So it's gonna go to the top of the container. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna push the container down so that it starts to overlap. I'll show you. So right now, it's naka-center. So what we can do instead is flex start. So in the header content, in the align items, we do flex start. So there, they're now aligned, the line and the picture. So now what we want to do is to push it down by using padding top 100 pixels. There you go. Looks way better. Now the problem here is that it's too tight, the image and the text. And as mentioned earlier, we use something called margins. So in the dot header image, is it called header image? Let me check. Oh, we didn't put a class. So in the image, we put a class of header image. And then we're gonna put a margin left because we want to push it to the left. Margin left of, let's say, we want the margin left to be 70 pixels. And there you go. That's the header. Do you guys have any more questions? Let me know in the chat if you guys have any more questions. Type ready if you're willing to push through with the about section. Type ready if you're G, or if you have any questions, just type in the chat. Ready? Not ready? Sleepy? Are you guys still good? What is the command used for the line div class equals header line? So what we're basically doing here is we're just basically making a div. Wait, I'll just maximize my screen here. In here, you can see we're just making a div here called header line, and we're not gonna put any content inside. We're just making a div so that we're gonna do something tricky called we're gonna set a height of 2 pixels in the div, and then we're gonna set a width of let's say I don't know how many pixels I did, mga I guess 20 pixels, and then we put a background color of white, so it will look like a line. What we're essentially doing here is using this div to make a line. If you're curious on what I did to have a shortcut on making classes, right? Instead of using div, then class equals blah 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 blah. What you can do instead is do something div dot the name of the class, so class name or something, and what that will do is will automatically generate the class equals for you, so you don't have to type it yourself. Did that answer your question or okay? Do you guys have any more questions or wala na? No more? Are you guys still with me? Baka you guys aren't understanding anything pala. Please let me know if you don't understand anything. Just type in the chat if you don't understand something. If not, I'll move on na. Okay, I'm assuming we're moving on. So, okay, now that we have the header, now what we want to fix is the this part, the about section. So what we can do here is for this part, this is the entire section. We can put this as the entire nav. I mean the entire nav to like the entire div. And then for this one, we're gonna put as the same thing as earlier. We're gonna put this one as the content. This entire thing as the content. And then we're gonna have a header here, a heading tag inside the content over here. And then what we also have is a div of the different. Let's just put some more space here. What we have here is a div of the different. This is a bit tricky. This is a div of the different services. I mean the what do you ever you call this? The about infos you want to provide. And then inside is another div. Three more divs inside. Yon. Tricky, tricky, tricky. So yeah, you have three divs here. So yeah, so this is what it's gonna look like. We're gonna have a nav here. I mean, a nav to like a div here, and then the content of the div. Then inside the content, not the div content, we're gonna have a header. And then inside the content div, we're also gonna have a div of the services about info pala. Then inside the about info list, we're gonna have an about for each one. This is gonna be tricky, but just watch, just to show how I can do it. So here, we're gonna create a new one called section. This you can use div again. It's really up to you. I'm just using semantic tags so that it's easier to understand. So we have a section here. Then we're gonna put a class of let's just name it um about. Let's name it about. Then inside we're gonna have a div of class equals about content. So we already tackled this. We have the about, then the about content. Now we need a header here, a heading. So what we're gonna use here is H2. H2 is gonna be where different. Actually, you can just copy it from the text here below, if ever. Then what we also have here is the div of the about that we want to provide. So we're gonna have a div here called class equals about list. Then for inside the about list, you have a div of an about. Get so far? So a div about item. Let's call it about item. Then we're gonna have three about items here. So we're gonna say div dot about item here again, and another one here again. Let's just copy it. Then inside the about item, we have an icon, a heading, and a paragraph. So let's do that. So in image, we're gonna use for the first one, we're gonna use images dot slash icon snappy process.png. For the second one, we're gonna use images dot slash icon dash affordable affordable. Oh, why is it not showing? Affordable prices. This one. Then for the third one, we're gonna use images slash icon people first. Now, as you can see, we now have our icons here. Now we want to add the heading, which is this part over here, the snappy process, the affordable prices of people first. So H3, snappy process. Then here we're gonna put an H3 again. Let's call it affordable prices. And here we're gonna call this one people first. And as you can see, it's now there. Yay! Now the last one is we need to add a paragraph, which is this one. Our application process can run blah 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 blah. So again, below the H3, we're going to add a paragraph. Let's just copy the one below instead of typing it all out. So for snappy process, we're going to copy this. Our application process can be completed in minutes. Copy paste, then reformat. Then the second one, affordable prices. We don't want you worrying about your high monthly costs. So this one, we're going to copy that. And if you don't know what you don't, if you're wondering how I'm reformatting this immediately like that, I'm using a plugin called Prettier, so install that if ever you're like curious now. But you can also manually reformat it like that. It's really up to you. Then for people first, we're gonna use our plants aren't full of conditions. Oh no, no conditions. Okay, now if you can see here, Let me just show you guys. Now we have everything all set up. Now it's really up to like using margins and displaying flex and doing all these sorts of things so that we get to format this way better. So what we're gonna do is, if you can see here, it's two attached to this one, to the heading. So what we're gonna do is, we called it about, diba? So we're gonna get that about. Let's get it dot about. Then we wanted to have more space on the top. So what we're gonna do is margin top and set it to 300 pixels. There's more space. Now, as you can see, there's no margins in the left and right again, so we have to do the same process as earlier. Let's go to dot about content and then do a width of 80% and a margin of auto. Boom. So we got the content, we made the width 80% now, and we set it to auto so that it's even and centered. Now, what we want to do is, let's just see our artwork here. We want to set display flex to this, because as I mentioned earlier, if they're below each other, what we can do is make them beside each other using display flex. So in the dot about content, what we used here, what is the most parent element of the about item? So for every about item, the parent element is about dash list. So we're going to use that to flex about dash list display flex. And there you go. Looks nicer, diba? Now, it's too near the title. Let's put a margin on the about list again. Margin top, 50 pixels. Maybe around 50 pixels will do. And there you go. Now, as you can see here, they're not spaced out evenly. So what we can do there is, we can add a class to each one. So this one is called about item image. Let's put a class there, about item image. Copy it to all the images, about item image, about item image. Also this one, let's put a class of about item header. Then just copy that to all the headers. Then let me show you this code trick. If you're on Mac, click on this, click on the paragraph here, then hold Option. And if you're on Windows, hold Alt. Now, if you click on this paragraph here again, and then this paragraph here again, you can actually type at the same time in all these three elements. So we can actually just do it like this. Class equals about item paragraph. See, magic. Yeah, there you go. So what we want to do is to add an about item margin top on the about item paragraph and a margin top on the title. So let's do that. So the about item, let's say about item heading. Is it called heading or header? About item header. Let's put a margin top. Let's say around 20 pixels. Let's see, that's good enough. Then for dot about item paragraph, let's put a margin top of 10 pixels. There, looks pretty. Now, if you can see the Figma here again, there's another line there. We can do the same thing as earlier. We're gonna set an empty div and put, like, I don't know, about line, then start to style it with the height or width, and then set the background color of it. So to do that, let's just do that. Um, let's call, let's put it, let me check where I placed it. Let's place it below the about content. So we're gonna put div, then we're gonna give it a class of about line. And essentially, what we're gonna do is do the same thing as this one, the header line. So we're gonna set a width of 200 and a height of 2 pixels. So we call it about line. So about line, we're going to put a width of 200 pixels and a height of 2 pixels. And then we're going to set a background of, let's see what background color I used here. We use uh, a gray color, so it's called BAAFBC. So I'm just gonna take a 5-second break just to get you guys like type everything that I just did. Okay, okay. So yeah, and then if you can see here, now we have the line. Now what we want to do is to add some margin again because it's too near the title. So again, we use margin. So in the about in the header, wait, is it the header? Um, let me check lang. Actually, let's just use the line to put a margin bottom instead of doing a margin top of the header. So a margin top, a margin bottom, let's say we want it to be around 70 pixels. And there you go. Nice. Now maybe we realize that maybe this is a bit too tight with each other. So what we can do is we can add a padding so that it gets more squished up. So let's add the padding in about item. So this about item. So for each one of this, let's add the padding para there's more space. So let's go to about item and see what happens if I put a padding here of, let's say, 10 pixels. See, there's more space now. So that's basically the about section. I think I didn't miss anything. Uh, yeah, the site's looking good so far. You guys have any questions before I move on? Any questions? Type ready if you're ready. Hmm, why is no one typing? Hey, everyone's ready. Um, okay. Okay, let's move on. So, just to give you like a hints, like a tip or a guide. Basically, when you're coding to like boxes, so a box within a box and a box and within a box and a box, so on and so forth. And then you're just kind of like manipulating the positioning using display flex and then the colors and the margins and padding in the background and so on and so forth, so that you get a desired look. So, with this one, this is kind of obvious now. So, for example, in this one, we're gonna say that this one is let's say, let's call this work. I don't know, work. This is the work div. And then inside the work div, we also have another div. Oops, a div here. I'm just reusing the lines here so I don't have to keep deleting and all. Here, this is another div. So this is the content of the div. Now inside we have the heading. So the H1 or H2 or H3, whatever I use there. Then we also have a button here. So there, that's the button. So now we have an idea on how our HTML will look like. This is the section. This is the content. Then there's inside here, there's a header and then a button. So let's code that. This is going to be a very easy one. So let's do another section. Hey, another section. And then inside we have a content div again. So we're going to do class equals, let's call this work div, work content. And then in the section, let's call this work. Now, inside the work content, what we mentioned earlier, there was a heading. So we're going to use a heading tag here. So for example, in the work content, we're going to do H2 and then put a class of work header. Yun. Then we're just gonna copy the content here, find out more about how we work. Let's just copy that. Then we also have a button. Button. Then we're gonna put here how we work. Then we're gonna put a class of work button. So now we can see here, there you go. That's basically how it's gonna look like. Now, if you see here, we have a background of the same color as the header. So we're gonna put a background there, and then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna put instead of it being like 100%, which is the header here, we're gonna set it to 80%, and then do a margin auto again because there's 80% margins here again in the side. Then inside, we're gonna also have another margin here in the content. Let's say around 80% again, then margin auto inside. So it's like a kind of like a recursion of like margins, if you would say. So let's do that. So in the dot work, we're gonna put a color, a background color. So let's do that. Dot work. Then we're gonna put a background of the same color as earlier, which is 2C2640. And as you can see, there you go. And the color is black. So let's just make the color white for all our content. There you go. Now, what we want to do now is, where's the button not showing? Where's the button? Let me just double check. About content work, content button. Oh, okay. So what remember earlier, we made the button color black, and we had to overwrite it for the others. So we're gonna overwrite it again. So let's do work button, and then we're gonna say border 2 pixels solid white again, and color white. Color white. Oops, color white. And there, now you can see it. Now, what we want to do now is to have a specified height for the work because it's too tiny. We want to have a height. So what we can do is add a height of, let's say, actually, instead of a height, what we can do is add a padding, as mentioned earlier. So let's see what happens if we put a padding here of 80 pixels on top and bottom, and the left and right will remain 0. So just leave it at 0 at left and right, and top and bottom is 80 pixels. So there's more padding now on top and bottom. You can use height if you want, but if you want more flexibility, then you can also use padding so that it will never overlap. Gets back. Yun. Then, as you can see, it's too long. It's 100%, so we're going to set the width to 80%. And as you can see, it's not what we want. It's at the left. So what we have to do is do a margin auto again. And there you go. Now, as you can see, we are too near the about. So as mentioned earlier, we have to do margin top again to 200 pixels. There you go. Now, we have to deal with the about content. The about content naman, we have to do another width 80% and then margin auto again. Dot work, content, width is 80% and margin is auto. And there you go. Now, what we want to do now is to display flex. Why? Because here, they're beside each other. They're not below each other. So, in the work content, so we have to find out what's the parent element of these two. So let's check it out. So here we have the text and the button. The parent element is the work content. So we're going to put display flex in the work content. Display flex. And there you go. Now, as you can see, they're too near each other. We want to add a margin to the button. So what we can do is we can do wait, let me just check my code. Work header is 15%. Actually, we don't have the margin left. What we can do instead is for this header, we're gonna set a width of 50% na lang. Para it doesn't occupy everything. We want it to be 50% wide na lang. Let's do that. So dot work header. The width is 50%. So it's 50% shorter. Or maybe instead of doing that, you want to do the other way around. I mean, you want to do a margin left na lang, that will also do. So let's do a margin left of 100 pixels. And it will do the same thing. Now the problem here is we forgot the reason why the button is expanding is because we didn't specify an align items. If you don't specify an align items, what it's gonna do is the browser is gonna think, oh, you didn't specify an align item, so from top to bottom, I'm just gonna expand it as much as I can. So we don't want that. So let's specify an align items. So in display flex, we're gonna do align items center, and there you go. Then we're just gonna do justify content space between again, para they get spaced out between each other. And there you go. That's how it's supposed to look like. Now let me just check the Figma to double check why is the how we work. Okay, the button is too small. So let's expand it a bit. So the how we work, what we can do na lang is to expand the width or add more padding to the left and right feather. So the width button is to a padding of, let's say, for top and bottom we want 0, and then actually let me double check the padding we used. So for padding, we use 9 pixels and 23. Let's say we want to overwrite it to 9 pixels and 28 na lang para it gets wider. 9 pixels and 28 pixels. Why is it doing that? Why you do this to me? Why? Oh, there, now it's working. Let me just double check in a 1440 by 990. Okay, that should work. There you go. I forgot to. Oh, wait, no. Let me just add. My bad. This is my bad. Let me just double check. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. The problem there is we should lower the padding, not make it higher. So let's make it 4 pixels na lang. What? No. Let me just check. 3 pixels. Oh, right. I'm adjusting the top. Let's just make it 20 pixels here. So 4 pixels and 20 pixels na lang. Oh no, why is it not working? How we work? Let's just expand the width na lang. Let's just do that instead. So for width, let's expand it to like 100 pixels. Let's try that. Too short, maybe around 300 pixels. Too long, maybe around 150 pixels na lang. There you go, finally. Finally, we got to fix it. So we had to adjust the width na lang para it gets longer. Okay? Last part, but not the least. Do you guys have any questions about this part? Um, type in the chat. Text in the chat. If you guys have any more questions, if not, type ready. Ready, ready. Let's see who's there. Ready. Okay. Okay, we're in the last part. Nice. So if you can see our progress, it's looking nice right now. So we basically have all our info that we need, and all that we need left is a footer. So here, what we can do, let's say this entire thing is called footer. So this is the footer, and then maybe this is the footer content, and then what we have here, excuse me, is a div here, here. Then inside this div, we have an image and links. So a div of links, if you would say. So this is another tricky one, since there's a lot of divs that we need to make for this one. And then we also have, let's get this one, a div of links here. Let's just expand this a bit here. Figma, why do this here? There, finally. And then you also have a separate div here. So there's a lot of divs going on here. And you have four. So you have four here, another one there, and then another one here, and another one here. So this is gonna be a tricky one, but kaya naman. So for this one, you have a footer, and then you have the footer content, and then you also have a div here with the image and the links of the social media, and then you have another div here containing a separate list of links. So let's do that. So let me just double check my code. So for here, let's make a footer tag again. And then we're going to have, as mentioned earlier, we're going to have a footer content div. And then we're first going to start off with this one. So this line here, we have a div here containing the logo and the social media icons. So let's create that. So let's make a div here. Let's call it footer sockmed, like for social media. Sockmed, not meant, med. And then inside the sockmed div, we're going to have an image and a div of links. So we're going to have an image here. Let's call it images slash logo.png. And then inside of sockmed again, inside of the sockmed div, we're going to have a div of the social media icons. So let's call this div.sockmed list. And then this is another way to show you on how to get icons for free in the web. So let's go to your browser. Let's search here font awesome. Font awesome. So once you go to font awesome, what you're gonna go to, wait, let's search font awesome CDN. CDN. Let's just get CDN. The first thing you see here is font awesome bootstrap CDN. So let's get that. And then right here you can see the link of the CDN. So we're just gonna copy this, copy, and then in here we're gonna add another link tag and then paste it in the href. So now we have access to all these icons we can use in the Font Awesome library. So let's search Font Awesome and then look at icons. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is slow because I'm share screening and all. There you go. So what I can search here is, for example, I want Facebook. Facebook. So now you have access to these icons. What we want here is the square. So let's click on that. Click. Why is it not working? Font awesome. What's wrong with you? Oh, there. Now, we get to access this icon. What we have here is the I tag. We can just copy this. So click on it, to copy. So we click on it to copy. And then we paste the icon in our SOCMED list. For here, we're just going to paste it. There we go. So let's check it if we actually added it. Oh no, what happened there? FA Facebook Square FA 2 times. Let me just double check my code. Style sheet href 4.7.0 minified. FAB FA. Why is it not popping out? Let me try saving it. Does anything happen? So there's something wrong with the CDN. Apparently, I guess the CDN we copied doesn't seem to work anymore. Maybe it's outdated or something. So maybe what we can do instead is to use not icons, but we can just use words na lang. So instead of icons, let's just type here, I don't know, Facebook. Then let's make it an A tag na lang. So A tag Facebook. Then let's copy this. Then let's put like around 4 more. 1, 2, 3. Actually, 3 more na lang. Then let's put here. Let's put here. Let me just check Twitter, uh, Pinterest, and Instagram. And there you go. So what we need to do now is we coded this part na. So what we need to do now is to code this part. So to do that, we coded the SOCMED part already. So let's stick with this first part. You guys don't get confused. Let's stick with this muna. How do we code this? Oh, I forgot to put a class here of footer. So for this, let's just go to our footer in styles.css, and then we're gonna do so for here dot footer, and maybe let's just add a padding of 90 pixels. Actually, let's just height na lang. Let's just use height of maybe around 600 pixels, and then a background of FA. Then we want all our links or all our text there to be capitalized or uppercase pala. So what we can do is text transform uppercase, and then we want all the weight of our links to be 700. So font weight 700. So as you can see, we have some spacing now. Now for the content, we want it to be with 80% again. Then margin auto. So for that, dot footer content width is 80% and margin is set to auto. There you go. Actually, instead of maybe using padding, I mean, instead of using height, you can use padding na lang para it starts to expand on top of the text. So let's do that. So we want to use padding. For top and bottom, we want 90 pixels. And left and right, we want 0 na lang. There you go. So this is the top of, you can see it. This is the top. And then there's a padding there now. And then we also want to have some margins below this purple section here. So what we can do instead is have a margin top on the footer of 200 pixels so that it starts to go down. There you go. Now for these ones, we want it to display flex so that it goes beside. So what we can do is in dot footer dot dash sockmed, so dot footer dash sockmed, we do a display flex. Parent goes beside each other. And then now we do a justify content space between, as mentioned earlier. So let me go between, and there you go. Now we want our links to be the color purple. We don't want that. So what we can do is dot softmed list and then A. So we're saying get every A tag in the softmed list. And then what we're gonna do is set the color to let's say the gray color na lang. So let's do a hashtag 817B85. So there you go. Then for every link, let's do a margin left na lang of let's say 30 pixels. There, looks way better. Nice. Then let's just put an align item center para it doesn't stretch out anymore. And there you go. So we're done with the SOCMED part. So we're done with this part. Now we have to deal with this part. So for that, we have to make a div inside the content, a div here, and then for child divs inside. So what we can do there is what we're gonna do is we're gonna have something called below the footer sockmed, we're gonna have another div, and then we're gonna call it footer links list. Footer links list. And then inside the links list, we're gonna have 4 sections of links. So what you can do there is we're gonna call this one div with div with the class of footer link. And then we're gonna have four, diba? So we're gonna have four. So let's just copy this. So we're gonna have four footer link. So what we did here was we got a footer links list here, and then for each one we have a footer link. Footer link, footer link, footer link. And then inside the footer link, what we have is more links. So what we can do there is we have parang a paragraph link una here. And then, actually, this is not even a link. Let's just say that's a paragraph or a header. And then for each one, this is a link. So for that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, um, we're gonna do a paragraph. Let's call this the header. Footer link header. This is called our company. And then below that, we have a div. We have a div here of footer of links. We want to add that. So we're gonna have a div of footer link links. And then we're gonna have four A tags. So let's just put an A tag here. So let's just put here how we work. Another A tag of how why ensure, and an A tag of view plans, and an A tag of reviews. Actually, let's just copy all of this, the footer link, to all of this para we don't have to do everything sabay. So we just have to change the text na lang. There you go. For each footer link, we replace it with what we just did. So if you can see our progress, that's how it looks like. So for the footer link list, links, this is a div. What we can do there is to make every link display block so that they occupy their own line. They're not beside each other, they're on top of each other. So for that, let's do, so for this one, this is called dot, oops, this is called dot footer links list. Links link, not footer links link. And then we're gonna get every A tag. So we're gonna put A there. Then we're gonna say display block. Oh no, I think I misspelled the name. Link links. Link links. There you go. Now, we just have to display flex each one of this. Display flex 4 of these child elements. And what is the parent again? So for this one, the parent of this. So for every footer link, we have a parent of footer links list, which will control all of these 4 children. So we're gonna do dot footer link list display flex. There you go. Now we want to have more spacing in between. So what we're gonna do here is some kind of math. So for each one, since there are 4, we want to have a width of 25% each. You can use margins, but I'm using width because I want them to have even spacing. Even of 25% each one. For let's get the footer link and then set each one to have a width of 25%. There you go. Now we're very far from the mockup, but we're almost there. So now we just have to add a margin of, like, for example, for the links list. No, 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 no. Yeah, for the links list, we're gonna add a margin top because in here it's too near the sockmed div, so we want to add a margin there. So we're gonna add that footer uh link. Oh, why did the names have to be so complicated? Links list. We're gonna put a margin top of around 70 pixels, I'd say. Yeah. And then as you can see in the line also, there's like a line. You can see there's a line there. We can make use of the built-in line in HTML na lang. So for this, we're gonna put in between the sockmed and the links list, we're gonna put an HR tag. It's gonna create a line. So if you put HR, it's gonna put a line there. Then in the HR, what we're gonna do is put a margin. For top and bottom, we want it to be around 30 pixels, and left and right around 0 pixels na lang. Then we can just remove the margin top here na lang of the links list of 70 pixels. And there you go. Now, what we can do here is in every section, there's a header, right? We can put a margin bottom for every header. So for footer link header, for every footer link header, we're going to do a margin bottom of around 40 pixels. Maybe that's a bit too big. Margin bottom of 20 na lang, 20. And there you go. Now, all we need to do is add more spacing in the A tags and change them to the color that we want them to be. So for that, we're going to get dot footer link and then links. So we're getting the links here, and then we're going to get an A tag. So from footer link links, we're going to get an A tag for every A element we see. So A, and then we're going to set a margin bottom. So we want more space in the links, margin bottom of 20 pixels and a color of 817V85. And that is too much margin. Maybe 10 pixels? And there you go. So we're basically done. Do you guys have any questions with the foot? Because that is kind of hectic. Like, I gotta be honest, it's kind of hectic. So I'll just give you a summary of what we did sa footer. Na lang, para you guys have an idea. We have a footer section here, a content, and then here, inside the content, we have a sockmed div. Inside the sockmed div, we have an image and the links, a div of links. And inside the div of links, we have a link, an A tag for each one. So the footer, the content, and then the sockmed, then the image, and then the sockmed list, then the links. Then below, we have a div of links list, and then we have four items here of several links. So for here, we have a links list, and then for we have four footer links. And then inside every footer link, there's a header and a div of a tags. So here we have a header. Inside the footer link, we have a header with a p tag and a div of links. And inside of the div of links, we have a tags. And then we just did some display flex here and there, display block, and so on and so forth. So that pretty much wraps up our website. Um, we didn't have time to make it responsive anymore. So change it, if we do change it to mobile, it doesn't work yet because we didn't configure it to work in phones. So there, it's destroying. But if you want the code to see how it will work if we make it a phone or a tablet, I'll be sending you guys the code source for this project. But just a caution, the code in this project, the one I just made 2 days ago, is not the same of what I did here because I did it from scratch again in my head. So yeah, I can send you guys the code of the finished one, just in case you're interested. But with regards to the entirety of the website, or maybe the footer again, do you guys have any more questions? If not, then just type "we're done" or something, or "we're good." Sige. So, I'm assuming we're done now, since you guys have no more questions. So I hope you learned a lot, even if you didn't get anything. I mean, if you didn't get understand a lot of everything I just did, remember that when I did this, when I learned HTML CSS when I first started out, it actually took me around like 4 or 6 months to actually master HTML CSS. So it's really normal for you guys to not understand a lot of what's going on yet. But no, remember, the more you practice with projects, the more you start learning tutorials, the more you start building things, that's when you will start to actually understand the principles, the classes, the all these complex things going on with HTML and CSS. So again, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to message me on Facebook, or yeah, just message me on Facebook, or if you want to email me if you're like formal or something, feel free to do so. Then I'll be sending you guys the source code in your emails after this workshop by Ricky or Zach, whatever. And yeah, so we're good. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you're free to leave. So thank you.